For over 30 years, the team at Hope Store New Beginning Center, along with our clients and community partners, have been building lives without violence in Dallas and Collin counties. If you're in immediate physical danger, please call 911. If you need shelter or would like to talk to someone about receiving our other free services, please call our 24-hour hotline at 972-276-0057 in English or Spanish. At Hope Store New Beginning Center, we offer free trauma-informed services for those affected by domestic abuse, battering intervention and prevention services for those who have abused their partners in the past, and free community education services for any community group or organization. Domestic abuse is a human rights issue that affects a third of all Texans. We empower victims, perpetrators, and community members to live in safety and foster healthy relationships. Please call our 24-hour hotline for help or visit hdmbc.org to learn more about our services. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Hope Store New Beginning Center, building lives without violence.
But my name is Jose Romero. I am one of the bilingual community education facilitators here at Hope Store New Beginning Center. And I have some images up here just reflecting what my job used to look like, what I actually used to do. I would go out in the community. I would speak with church members. I would speak with organizations, other agencies, and go and speak to a lot of the youth. We were in high schools a lot. We do different curriculums with them. So when COVID-19 hit and we had to readjust the way we do our education, it was just a whole learning experience. And I do miss being in front of individuals and having that interaction, being able to ask questions and have that conversation flow. So it's one thing I really miss from previous pre-COVID-19. But we've adjusted, we've all had to adjust to these Zoom meetings and finding educations in different formats. So hopefully we're able to finesse our way through this, because I've had some issues where in some of our presentations, we've just had things act up, and things happen with technology. But like I mentioned, we had a little introduction video that touches briefly on what our organization, Hope Store New Beginning Center, offers for our clients and different individuals that might be going through some form of domestic violence in their household or with a partner. So we offer those free services, and we'll touch a little bit more about that as we progress a little bit towards the end. But one of the services we do offer is the education. I am part of that education department, and what our department does is we promote healthy relationships to empower community members of all ages so they can understand, prevent, and respond effectively to all forms of abuse. Because we know when we get the message out there and we start talking about having these hard conversations that you usually don't have, that's when we empower these other community members so they can actually speak out or actually inform them on some of the services that are out there for maybe one of their friends or one of their family members that might be going through something. So that's part of what our department that I'm in does. But I also wanted to remind everyone before we actually start that CEUs are available for this webinar. And at the end, there's going to be a post survey. So if you do need those CEUs, just make sure to fill out there's going to be a link that pops up, and it's going to have that survey ready for you if you do require those CEUs. Anyone else that might want to fill that out, that information is always helpful to me and my colleagues as well when we do these webinars, because it lets us know if we need to focus on something more, if we need to take something out that just possibly isn't working. So it always helps us, progress and improve some of our webinars that we have and that we do with individuals. But I just wanted to throw that out there, and I'll throw another reminder before we end today, because I know those CEUs are important to individuals. And you're going to see my face like turning left and right. So I have multiple screens because I have the Facebook chat open, I have the regular chat open. The CEUs are for continued education credits that some individuals might need that have licenses that require to continue doing their educations for that. So if you need that, just remember, it'll pop up at the end. It'll have that link for that if you need it, okay? But yeah, if you see my head turning everywhere, that's what it is. It's just I'm checking all the chat boxes, monitoring everything, making sure I answer all these questions. But as far as today's objectives and what we're going to focus on, we're going to focus on identifying poor interpersonal skills in children and apply methods to help these children improve these interpersonal skills. We're going to learn ways to start a conversation with children because we know as children start getting older and start getting into their teenage years, these conversations as a parent get harder and harder to have with these teenagers. And I know, like, especially with some of these teenagers that I would be in these schools with, talking with afterwards, we would finish up a training, and you'd have some of these kids come up to me, and they'd be like, Jose, I know we're talking about domestic abuse. This is a very important topic, but my parents have never brought this up. Or it'd be something like the moment I bring up a conversation about either sex, about alcohol, about drugs, about substance use, any little thing like that, it's automatically shut down. And they're not met there by their parents when they're trying to get that conversation started. So a lot of the times we see that there's a lack in conversation when it comes to these hard topics, and we know it's not easy to have those conversations. But we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And last but not least, we're going to hopefully acquire some skills to help children resolve conflict in a healthy manner. And okay, I have a what if you don't need a CEU but a certificate to prove you attended? We can get that taken care of as well. And so that's from Caleb and Kaylin. So at the end, when you see the CEU link pop up, there's going to be a box at the bottom that says additional comments. Just write that down for me because at the end we do get all those responses. So just let me know that you need the attendance and we can get that taken care of for you as well. Just because we do numerous of these and we're keeping tracks, just make sure to write it down there so I can remember about, and make sure to get that to you too. Okay. But moving forward, I like to throw out this disclaimer because I am not a parent. I don't have any children, but at one point I was the legal guardian of my niece for about 5 to 6 years. And a lot of the hands-on experience that I have is from those few years that I had custody of her. It was a lot of trial and error. It was a very difficult time because I was still growing up myself. I was still trying to learn a lot of the things on how to be an adult, how to be a productive member of society. At the same time, I'm here taking care of my niece, making sure her needs are met. So it was just an uphill struggle essentially is what it was. And I felt like I didn't wasn't sure if I was doing right by her, but I knew I couldn't give up on her. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about was that those experiences that I had, what I saw that worked for her, what I saw that didn't work for her, and it's a lot of my experiences and a lot of the research that I've done to help supplement that as well. But one of the things I hear from parents is like, what are these interpersonal skills and why are they important? So the first one, so what are they? It's like it's really how we exchange those thoughts and ideas and emotions and feelings with other individuals because we know right now we're probably maintaining social distancing, we're spreading apart, we're not as social, we're not out there as much as we used to be. But when we were out there together, even now when we're working with other individuals, other coworkers, we're working together to accomplish the same goal. So there's always interaction going on. Children at schools, this is what they're doing. They're talking, they're communicating, they're going back and forth, or at least it's what they were doing before COVID-19 hit. So it's how we communicate essentially. It's those social skills, as a lot of people like to refer to them. It's the social skills that we use to connect with other individuals. Now, why are they important? For children, they're extremely important because this is how they are able to make those connections with other children. They're able to make these friends that are eventually going to be their support system. Parents like to think that it's like, you know what, I'm always going to be there for my child. I'm always going to make sure they're well taken care of and no harm ever happens to them. And while yes, we would all like to be there every single time and make sure that children don't have to go through anything without us, the reality is we're not always going to be able to be there. But you know who is going to be able to be there? Those friends, that support system that they build up. That's why it's important for these children to be able to interact with others in a positive way so they can build those friendships. Because odds are, if you have your child and they have someone at school that's bullying them, are they going to want to be friends with them? Probably not. They're probably going to steer away from that. So they're not going to want to build that support system with this individual that's bullying them. So when you're able to make those positive connections, when you're sharing, you're cooperating, that's when you establish those friendships. And that's those friendships. It's eventually what's going to be your support system for these children when they become those teenagers. And again, those conversations that we were talking about, that the substance abuse, the alcohol, the drugs, all that, those conversations are going to be easier for them to have with that support system that could potentially have resources for them, or could open the door to, hey, this is how you should talk to your parents, so this is how you can approach them and have the discussion with them. So that support system that they end up building is very beneficial for them. And it all starts at when they're little, as childs. But one of the other things that I tell my students when I do give a presentation in front of them is, I let them know, hey, one of the worst things y'all can do today is leave this classroom with a question you had in mind and not asking that question. Why is that? The reason behind that is, if we ask questions, that's how we get information. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. Because maybe I don't have that information, but if I ask that question and I'm confident enough to say, hey, teacher, I don't know this, or could you explain a little bit more on that? It's going to help me gain that knowledge. But a lot of these kids are just shy, or they're worried about being embarrassed if they ask a question. But when they're able to build those interpersonal skills and build up confidence in themselves, it gives them that confidence to ask those questions without feeling like they're going to be ridiculed, because they know, hey, this is helping me learn. It's helping me gain knowledge that I didn't have before. So it's another reason why these are important to them. But again, as a child grows up, they're eventually going to start working. They're going to get probably a part-time job while they're in high school, and after high school, they might be working full-time. And when they're in a workplace, it's not just going to be them alone. They're most likely going to be working with someone. They're going to be part of a team. And again, they're going to be working together to accomplish the same task, the same goal ahead of them. And ideally, you want that open line of communication with other individuals you're going to be working with. So that's another reason why it's very important as well. Last but not least, relationships. Now, depending on who you ask, relationships usually require some sort of a communication. If you were to ask my teenagers, they tell you it's just a matter of swiping right and making sure we match. But that's a whole different story. But ideally, relationships, healthy relationships, have some sort of healthy communication where maybe a problem arises, and instead of sitting there and letting myself get more worked up or thinking the worst of my significant other, I'm gonna ask questions. I'm gonna bring it up. I'm like, hey, this little comment you made really hurt my feelings, and we're gonna address it then and there, instead of just letting it brew into something else to the point where I just explode in my significant other's face. So it helps them. It helps children. These interpersonal skills helps a child through different phases in their lives. It helps that support system, helps them gain knowledge, helps them work together in the workplace, but it also helps establish a relationship with a significant other. So they're just very important for them as they start growing up and as they start becoming or hitting adulthood, uh, rather. But there are plenty of different interpersonal skills. We're going to talk about some here in a bit, but some of the ones I wanted to touch on that aren't really that important to focus on, because these right here that I have, like eye contact, smiling and laughing at appropriate times, pausing at times during conversation, and so forth, those are learned with practice. The children are going to learn and practice that naturally as it comes with, it might be with family members, with you as a parent, with their siblings, with the neighbor, with their friends at school. It's just they're going to have a lot of practice when it comes to those. Yes, they are important, but ideally you don't want to focus on those just because they get a lot of practice from outside sources where eventually they will pick them up over time. These social skills, these interpersonal skills don't happen overnight. So that's one thing I had to really learn, because it was frustrating at times to see that my niece was picking up some interpersonal skills, and then within the next few days she had forgotten all about it. And it's not that she had just forgotten how to work on these interpersonal skills. Like, one of the main ones that we had an issue with was a personal space. Like, being able to give someone their personal space and not just being in front of their face like this when you have a conversation was one thing we were really struggling with. But they don't happen overnight. They require patience. It requires a lot of repetitive process, day in and day out, before they're able to learn that. But again, that eye contact, that smiling, laughing, all these that I have up here right now, yes, they are important, but at the same time, these children will practice that as they grow. Some of the other ones that you see, like, a lot of times we talk about these interpersonal skills being just communication back and forth, but they can also be nonverbal. And by nonverbal, I have a little chart right here. It might be the closeness to someone. Again, when it comes to personal space, I'm not going to be sitting face to face next to someone when I have a conversation with them, especially right now with social distancing, practicing and having that 6 feet distance within one another. That would be something children should be able to pick up on, right? Body contact, shaking hands as a sign of respect when you meet someone for the first time, facial expressions. If you're having a conversation, you're not just gonna roll your eyes at someone that you're having a conversation with, right? Because that's going to show a lack of interest in this conversation. It's going to just come off as rude. So there's all these non-physical or just non-verbal ways that someone can communicate, and can really see what those or have them come out as social cues rather. But we'll talk a little bit more about these as we progress as well. We're going to pick out a little bit of these, but let's talk a little bit briefly about some of these green flags. So this is when you see that, okay, my child is actually picking up on some of these good interpersonal skills. So, like, sharing with their siblings, maybe they have an iPad, a tablet, something that they share, and they're taking turns. That's a great green flag right there. It's showing that sharing back and forth, that's what you want to see. Same thing with cooperating, active listening. Now, when it comes to active listening, I don't just mean have the child sit there in front of next to you while you read them a story, and then they just nod, smile. And my niece used to do that, and I wanted to find a way. It's like, well, how can I see if she's really listening or if she's just there in the moment? Because a lot of adults are having conversations with other individuals, and they're just there in the moment waiting for this conversation to finish. But I want to make sure, hey, is my niece really picking up the information I'm sharing with her? So I would use a book, a small little Disney books, and I would read her a page or two. And then I would ask her, hey, so what color was Cinderella's dress? Just to see if she was picking up on that. And I would ask her little questions just like that. So she got it in her mind. It's like, oh, okay, my uncle's gonna give me a few questions about this. So she started picking up, just like, I really have to pay attention now. So it got to the point where I could ask her like some obscure question, and ask about some minor detail in the story, and she would remember it. So it just showed me, hey, okay, she really is listening. But one of the reasons I wanted to point this out is because usually when it comes to children and these interpersonal skills, a lot of the times we tend to focus on the negative ones, what they're not getting right. So you want to give them this positive reinforcement when they show signs like they're cooperating or they're sharing with their siblings. Let them know, hey, I appreciate the fact that you're doing this. Good job. Let them know, because again, often children are just used to hearing the negatives. It's like, why are you doing this? You're not supposed to do it that way. Do it this way instead. So it's always good for a child to hear that positive reinforcement when they're doing good, because it usually just goes without saying, it's expected, so nobody really is like, hey, good job, right? So always make note of that. If you see the child is doing something well, let them know as well. It helps build up that little confidence within themselves. Okay, now talk a little bit briefly about what some of the red flags are. red flags here would look like problems making and keeping close friends. Now, that should be that's one of the very obvious ones that you can see as a parent. Even teachers are able to pick up on this. And if they see that maybe this child is having problems making friends, it's something that they would bring to the parents' attention. But you can ask your child or the child you're working with. It's like, hey, do you have any friends and everything? And just ask little questions here and there to see, because if you have a child that's not having that support system or establishing that support system around them, it's something's happening in that situation. Either they're the ones being inappropriate, or they're just those around them are being inappropriate, where they don't want to make that connection with them. So it's just something to be aware of. Poor listening skills, again, when they're just there, they're not making that line of communication with, or not like line of communication, but they're not paying attention to the information that's being given. That's another one of those red flags. It might not be a major one, but it's still, it helps. It helps let you know, hey, there might be something going on here. Interrupting conversations frequently, even bullying, lack of sympathy. Now, I've had a comment before. It's like, hey, Jose, you see a lot of these in other children as well that have more mental health problems, but that's not the focus for today's issue. This was just today. For today, we're just focusing on for the interpersonal skills and some of the red flags for today's topic. But you do see these in other children as well. But just for today's training, today's webinar, we're going to focus mostly for children with interpersonal skills. But the reason why bullying and lack of sympathy might be one of the bigger red flags that you can see in these children is because there's been a study from some of the Harvard, it was the Harvard School of Public Health, I believe it was, that showed men who bully their classmates as children are 4 times likely to have engaged in violence against a female partner. Now, in our line of work, since we do work in prevention, we're trying to prevent it from escalating to that abuse itself when it comes to it. So we want to help others see those red flags so they can help prevent and prevent that potential abuse when it comes to children hitting that adulthood, because a lot of the behavior that we see does become normalized in children, especially if they grew up in an abusive household where maybe they weren't the ones being abused, but maybe their parents were abusive towards each other. It normalizes some of that abusive behavior. But we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a bit in the next few slides. One of the ways we improve those interpersonal skills with children, you can praise them for sharing. Again, letting them know that they're doing something well, that they're doing something good goes a long way for a young child as they're growing up, because it helps build that confidence. It lets them know, hey, I'm really doing something good here, so I'm going to continue doing that. Because sometimes these like hearing those positive reinforcements, you get a release of those dopamines that make you feel good, and make you want to continue doing well, so your parents can continue to praise you like that. But giving each family member small jobs during meal preps. Now, this one we're going to touch a lot more here in the section. I have a whole section on the importance of family meals and how effective they can be as well. But at the same time, letting all your family members participate, but giving them proper jobs for their age, because at the same time, you don't want to give a 5-year-old or a 4 or 5-year-old, you don't want to tell them, go set out all the china at the dinner table, because that might not end well. So you want to, maybe if you have younger children, let them know, hey, can you put out the disposable cups or maybe the silverware? So something little small, just to help them feel like they're involved. And it lets them practice that cooperating, that paying attention, active listening, taking directions from parent figure. So it lets them practice that as well, and it helps them feel like they're part of the family there when they're all contributing to that family dinner. Because usually when it comes to family dinner, like especially when I was growing up, that was my mom's thing. She handled all of that. She prepped the table. Me, my siblings, we were never involved in any of that. The only thing we would have to do is when she said the meal was ready, we'd come get our plate and either sit in the living room, take the food to our room, and that was it. So there was really no connection that we were able to make. But again, we'll talk about that more about that here in a bit. Reading a book, something that the child might like, and this is more for the younger children as well. So just read a book to them to try and practice that active listening with them, and ask them about, hey, so what was this person's name? What was this character's name? What were they wearing? Where were they going? Just simple little questions to see if they're paying attention. And if you need to use little rewards to bribe them, maybe a piece of candy here and there, I was like, that's sometimes helps even more in that situation. When it comes to practicing steps of a conversation, conversations usually come naturally to some individuals. Like, they know how to start a conversation, they know how to like inject themselves into a conversation that's already going, they know how to put themselves in that scenario to continue that conversation. Some children, some teenagers, and even adults have a hard time doing that. So if you know the proper ways to have a conversation, like obviously, if you see two individuals having a conversation, you're not just gonna rudely interrupt and throw yourself in there. But some children still don't understand that and don't see why that's frowned upon. So being able to practice that with them, having little role play scenarios, is another way that we can approach situations like that. Or just any situation where you see that they might be lacking when it comes to these interpersonal skills, use a role playing scenario with them and practice it out. That's one way you're able to really get these children to learn some of these interpersonal skills that they might be struggling with as well. Practice personal space, because this, to my niece, was a very difficult one. Again, like I mentioned, in the mornings, what this would look like for us is she was in her room, she would barge in, knock my door open, jump into my bed, and then poke me and ask me, hey, uncle, are you up? And well, now I am, but I use that as one of those teaching moments. And I figured we need to do something. And I slowly started letting her know, hey, Celine, what we need to do here is, if you're up in the morning, you can't just rush into my bedroom like that. You can't just jump in my bed and start poking me and asking me if I'm up. First, you have to see if I'm awake. And we're like, so how do we do that? It's like, and we started with adding a knocking before you enter. Knock, see if I'm up, ask if you can come in. So simple little things. We started doing that first. So she started picking that up. And then we started implementing, don't jump into my bed. Don't poke me in my face. It was, if I say, yes, you can come in, just come up and ask me at the side of my bed. Don't jump in, don't ask. So it was slowly, I was adding more steps and more steps so she could see, okay, I need to give you, this is your space. I can't just invade it. And I was seeing that I was struggling a little bit with her. And I've seen examples of two other ways you can go about it. One is a hula hoop. You can get a hula hoop with a child and let them know that hula hoop and that circle that it makes around you once you put it on, that's your personal space. So nobody can enter that space because that is your personal space. So the way I've seen that one practice is, you get two hula hoops. You have a child with their hula hoop, and then you have your hula hoop. And you have a conversation with them, and you invade their little circle with your hula hoop and see if they pick up on it when you have those conversations. And the way my niece found, realized that, I can't remember, I've been trying to remember for the longest what TV show she was watching, but in this TV show, the way she was able to pick it up is she extended her arms and she built a circumference around herself. And that's what pretty much ended up helping her realize, okay, this is my safe zone. This is my personal space. So when we would have a conversation and I wanted to see if she was picking up on what personal space looked like, I would scoot in a bit close to her, and she's like, "Whoa, uncle!" And she would just stretch her arms out and build that circle around herself. And she's like, "You have to stay this far away from me. Like, this is my personal space." So she was able to pick that up, and then she started applying that when we would go to like grocery stores together and buy things that we needed. When we would get in line, instead of being right up close to someone in their basket, she would start to slowly apply this. That, okay, I need to give them their own personal space as well. because I don't want them jumping into my personal space. So I'm going to respect their personal space as well. So you slowly, like I was slowly starting to see that, okay, this is working. But that's one way you can go about that, using those hula hoops to help them visualize that personal space when it comes to that. Another very important one, or that can be very useful, would be caring for animals, even plants. Mine, what I ended up doing with my niece, we had a simple goldfish. So when it came to that, my niece was starting to realize, okay, she wanted a pet. We did not want to get her a dog. We didn't want to get her a cat because that's too much. That was just, I was seeing too much responsibility for her to take on. So we went with a goldfish. And we had to learn, okay, well, we got to filter the water, we got to clean the water, we got to feed the goldfish and everything. So it was everything that we had to do. And I slowly started letting her take a little bit more and more and more responsibility when it came to taking care of the fish. So it just showed her, hey, okay, I can care about other things. It's not just me. I can show a little bit of sympathy here for this fish and care about it and make sure it's well and alive and everything. So it was just little things that I was doing to help her realize, okay, I can build a connection with a live animal with her to help her to care about other things as well. So it's just small little things here and there that I started applying with her to help her build that arsenal of interpersonal skills when it came down to it. But a lot of it comes down to practicing with a child when it comes to these interpersonal skills. Again, it's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. So it does require a good amount of practice. One of the other things that can be done with a child that might be having difficulty picking up that body language or even starting those conversations is you can toss a ball back and forth where if if the child tosses the ball to me, I'll ask them a question or I'll answer the question that they asked me. And as soon as I'm done asking a question, I toss the ball back to them and let them answer and ask a question. And once that is done, we just toss it back and forth. So we're slowly practicing a conversation. At the same time, there's no pressure to hurry up, give me a response then and there. And I've seen these balls. You can find them on Amazon as well, where they have they have pre-written questions on the ball. So if they catch it wherever their thumb is at, that's one of the questions that they can ask, and it already has that question ready for them, so they don't have to panic or freak out trying to think of another question. But it helps them practice that conversation, keeping it going. And another thing I've seen with that is you can, once you see that the child has picked up that conversation and they know how to get that conversation going, you can throw in, or you can change it up a bit and ask, hey, can you pick up when on some body language, maybe when I'm not interested in the conversation, and point it out? And the way that would look like, say I toss the ball to them and they're answering the question. Let's say I pick up my cell phone and I'm looking at cell phone. That's an obvious sign that, hey, I'm not fully aware, I'm not paying attention to you. So if they're able to pick up on that, it's like, okay, yeah, now you're showing signs that you're not enjoying the conversation, there's something wrong with the conversation. So you're picking up on some of those nonverbal social cues, and it helps them make note of that as well. It's like it lets them know, okay, maybe the topic I'm talking about isn't interesting. I can change that up, and it just lets them know. It helps them practice those nonverbal cues that they might not be aware of as well. But practicing teaching respect again, a lot of that comes from being a good role model as well. Like if you're showing your child those signs of respect, if you're letting them, if you're working that respect into your day-to-day conversations with them, your routine with them, letting using those yes please, no thank you with them, they're going to pick that up because they're going to see you as a role model using those examples with them. So eventually these children learn to pick that up as well. But what else can be done to to help improve those social skills? Again, focus on what's important. Those smaller ones that we talked about a few slides at the beginning, where it's making sure eye contact is there, though, and I forgot what the other ones were, but all of those will come over time because they're practicing those conversations, they're practicing that eye contact with individuals, with family members, with siblings. So if there's a certain one that you want to focus on, make that the main focus. But at the same time, you need to know your child's limits. You don't want to overwhelm them with multiple different, you don't, they might be lacking a few interpersonal skills, but don't bombard them with, you need to get all of these 10 different skills by next week, because realistically, that's not going to happen. Make sure you focus on the one, two that are very important to you to help this child out. And then once those are, you see those improvements have been made there and there's progress being made there, then change it up to another interpersonal skill that you can help them out with instead. But how do you, because we know there's situations where there's some children that are shy by nature. They are shy. And when it comes to those situations, how do you help those kids? And again, it comes down to practice, empowering them. And one of the best ways you can do that is by using puppets with them. The reason why it's very effective when you use puppets it doesn't just have to be a child that's shy, but puppets, when it comes to a child using those puppets, they usually invoke their emotions into the puppets where they feel, okay, now I can talk about these different issues because they're putting their feelings into the puppet. So now it's the puppet's issues that they're going through, it's the puppet's emotions, it's the puppet being sad, it's not me anymore. So it's easier for a child to talk about some of those problems, some of those issues that they're going through when you relay that through a puppet and just have role play scenarios in that situation. It helps them a lot in that situation. And I wanted to talk a little bit briefly here on cell phones because these are three questions I asked the parents in person when we had those conversations. But one of the things is, what's the average age your child receives their phone? And here in the United States, the average age for a child who first receives their phone is actually 11 years old. So fairly young when it comes to that. I'm not here to tell you what age you should give them their phone, what your decisions or anything behind it should be. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because technology does act as a barrier. I'll be the first one to tell you, I love technology. I'm thankful for what it's allowing us to do right now. It's letting us have these webinars through Zoom while COVID-19's happening, while some of us are working from home, some of us are just social distancing. So it helps us in situations like that. And it's very useful. But at the same time, when it comes to children growing up, when it comes to them learning, it's taking away that practice that they have with other children. Excuse me. It's taking away their ability to practice with other individuals, that conversation. Because usually when you have a text, you'll be texting, someone gets it on the other end. This individual can reply to this text whenever they want in that situation. Conversations and face-to-face don't work like that. You usually have to reply within a few seconds to get that conversation going. But when it comes to text, it takes that practice just out of the way. Like it's not there anymore. So they're able to reply to that text whenever they want in that situation. So it's taking away, again, that practice. Social media, when it comes to that, they're usually more inclined to post things into social media instead of when an issue might arise with someone else, they're more inclined to just post it on social media and start an issue or start something that they might regret. So it's acting as that barrier when it comes to, again, a healthy line of communication. Now, I'm not going to touch much on the phantom ringing and anxiety, but usually kids, when they become, I don't want to say addicted, but when they're just completely integrated with technology, they can start developing what is called this anxiety when they think they heard their phone go off or their notification went off, but it really nothing went off. They're just hearing their phone notification goes off, and it's just again acting as a barrier when it comes to them. But I want to touch on what conversation starter tips are, and the main thing when it comes to conversation starters, one of the best things that we can do for children, for even teenagers, is have family dinner time with them. And this doesn't mean both parents have to be there. It doesn't mean a parent has to be there. It can be an uncle, an aunt, a grandparent. But as long as a child is being given that opportunity to have a family dinner with family members being around, it doesn't even have to be a home cooked meal. It can be fast food, takeout, a pizza. But when you're giving children the ability to have that dinner with their family, it increases their odds that they're going to open up to having conversations with other individuals. And prior to COVID-19, there was 16 times you could have a family dinner with your family. But now with a lot more families where remote work comes into play, those might be higher now. But it looked like 7 breakfasts, 7 dinners, and even 2 lunches on weekends. It doesn't have to be every single time. Like, and when it came to my family, we hardly ever had family dinner together. Again, it was mostly my mom would cook the meals, and me and my siblings, we were off in our room. So we never had that setting where we're sitting at the family dinner table, we're giving each other time to talk about our day, talk about what's going on, reflect on what we're doing. We never had the opportunity to do that. But if you're able to establish that with a child, one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to bring up those bad topics, your messy rooms, chores you haven't done, bad grades, homework. You don't want them to make a connection with the family dinner table as being a bad thing. You want to let them know that this is a good thing, that we're having this conversation together. So you don't want to lose them just by bringing up these topics in that situation. And what some of the benefits of those family dinners are, according to the National Center of Addiction and Substance Abuse, is they're more likely to eat healthy, because if you are having those family dinners, odds are you're going to be making them, you're going to let them maybe pitch in some ideas on what they want to cook. So you're going to be cooking those home cooked meals instead. They're more likely to perform better academically. They're less likely to engage in risky behavior. And again, those conversations are hard to talk, but this is something that can be done at the dinner table as well. It just rolls out that red carpet to let them know that, hey, anything we can talk about, we can do it. So at the dinner table in that situation. But it also improves relationships with parents in that situation as well. And we have conversation starter tips. One of the best things a parent could do to help a child out is just start with an embarrassing story to help break that ice, to help them realize, hey, okay, my parents went through this embarrassing situation. Like, how did you get yourself out of that situation? So a child might come to their parent when they share those embarrassing stories. It's like, okay, it wasn't the end of the world. How did you handle that situation? And it helps them realize, okay, my parent is actually a human individual. They're just not this parental figure that I can't talk to them about. So it just helps bring more of a humanity when it comes to a parent. Get them involved again. Get them involved in that meal planning. If they're a teenager and they're interested in trying some recipe that they saw on Facebook on Tasty, let them try it out. Be there with them if maybe they don't know how or what temperature chicken needs to be cooked at 165. Let them know, okay, it needs to be cooked here, and just help them out in those situations. But also set a day in the week when you can invite one of their friends over, because one thing I really noticed in with with my family, those rare times that we did have a family dinner together, it was when either I or one of my siblings were allowed to bring one of our best friends over for family dinner. And usually when that happened, we would see a completely different side to our parents. It was Our parents were very loving and caring. They would ask questions. And my friend was Pablo. He's the one I always invited over. And my parents were so nice every single time I would invite him over. They're like, hey, Pablo, how are you doing at school? How's this going? How's your family? Yada, yada, yada. So I was able to see this other side of my parents that I hardly ever saw. And it helped me make that connection. It's like, okay, my parents really aren't that bad when it comes to this parent thing they do. Maybe this is what I needed to see though, that they have feelings behind it, that they do care, even though they might not always show it. I was able to see that when I invited my friend over, or when my siblings did the same thing. That's when we were able to make that connection, and slowly and slowly, that's where some of the family dinners started happening, because we started to realize, hey, it doesn't always have to be just because our best friends are over. Can we do this more even if they're not there? So we slowly started to add those family dinners to the rotation. So it wasn't anymore just get your dinner plate, go to your room, sit by the TV. It wasn't any more of that. Now we were slowly talking about our days. We were talking about things going on. We were talking about relationships that we had just gotten into. It's like why we're like who we were dating at the time. So it really helped open the door when it came to communication with our parents in that situation. And it was all because we were able to see that, hey, okay, our parents really aren't that bad when it comes to this parent thing. And it all happened because we were able to invite one of our friends over for a dinner table, or for a dinner rather. And sometimes, we can be realistic. Sometimes family dinners just aren't going to happen. And there's no real secret recipe on this is what you need to do to get your child to talk to you. There's no simple little answer when it comes to that, because realistically, these children are just going to open up when they feel comfortable. It might be when they're washing the car with you, when they're helping you clean the dog, when they're helping, or when they're driving to and from dropping them off at school. It's just going to happen organically when they feel really comfortable in those situations. With the younger children, it might just be that bedtime. And again, with those teenagers, it might be when you're cooking those family dinners with them, when they're boiling that chicken, when they're cutting those vegetables. It's just going to happen organically. But the more opportunities and chances that you give these children to make that connection with you, the more likely you are to get those conversations going with them. And one of the things I hear from parents a lot is, how do I get past that? I'm fine. I'm fine. I always ask my teenager how they're doing. So I'm fine. I'm fine. Engage their interests. It's one of the best things you can do for, especially for a teenager. When those conversations become so hard that there's no conversation happening, ask them about their interests. Teenagers love talking about the things that they love. Okay. And if I were to ask you, like, if you were to ask me, like, y'all probably don't know much about me. Y'all probably only know that I'm the bilingual community education facilitator for Hope Learner Beginning Center. But if you were to ask me, it's like, hey, what's your favorite athlete? And I'm like, Tony Cruz. He plays for Germany. He won the World Cup. He's been the captain for them. I could talk about my favorite athlete for ages. So if you're able to figure out, okay, maybe my child has a poster of this athlete, I can ask, who is that? I don't know who they are, and it works out best for parents when you don't know, because you're realistically trying to find out what their interests are. So okay, we know what my favorite athlete is, Tony Cruz from Germany, right? What's your favorite artist? And I have two favorite artists, and one I can tell you it's a group of angry German men that sing in a metal band. And then on the right hand side, it's another German artist, and she sings more of alternative rock. So I could talk about days about the concerts that I've been to for these two groups. So slowly, the connection we can make here is, I clearly like an athlete that's from the Germany national team. I like two artists from Germany. So realistically, we can make the assumption, hey, Jose, where would you like to travel? And I would tell you, I would love to travel to Germany. In this, we can figure this out just from engaging in my interests. Small little things like that that we can pick out. Because if you saw that I had that Tony Cruz poster on my wall, you could get all this information from me just by asking me about my interests. And I'd be more than happy to tell you about my interests, especially those teenagers. Again, they love to share that information with others. So if you're able to see that, if you want to find out more about teenagers, ask them about what they like. And it's just, you're going to open up those gates. And I have the movie here for you. I have the lesson learned, and one of the more popular ones you see nowadays, it's that Frozen one, Frozen movie, Frozen 2, that just came out not too long ago. But all these movies have a lesson that you can teach children when it comes to interpersonal skills, when it comes to healthy communication, when it comes to, in Frozen setting, not to bottle up your emotions, because when we do that, they just explode. So we can use movies, we can use media that we have out there to help children in those situations, because these movies, these Disney movies, are very child friendly. But again, at the same time, it comes with a lot of different lessons that can come from that. And this little one right in the center, the one with the little blue, little panda looking thing, that's Studio Ghibli, and that's a Japanese studio. That's essentially Japan's Disney. That has movies aimed more for teenagers. It might be topics where they talk about death, losing someone you care about. So topics that might be harder, that you might not often see in a lot of Disney movies. Granted, you do see some topics of death talked about in Disney movies like Lion King. And just a quick plug, like when I say love Lion King, I even have my Lion King cup. But we can use those different media sources to help children in these situations. And again, Studio Ghibli there for some of the older children, teenagers, if you want to make that connection with them, that's something else you can use in that situation. But last but not least, I know I had scheduled from 12 to 1:30, but I'm going to try and knock it out a little bit earlier. I know it can be tiresome sitting here for so long, but we're going to talk about real quickly, what are some different situations that might cause a child to go through some sort of conflict? Number one, they might see domestic violence in their household. It might be between their parents. Their parents might be, one of the parents might have lost their job due to COVID-19. Now, the other one is feeling pressured because all the bills are falling on them and they're struggling. And it's just so much harder when all that pressure is on you, and it's causing friction. Where now there's talks about divorce, and the children might feel responsible for that situation. They might feel guilty. It's all different scenarios that can come in from outside sources that make children go through some sort of conflict. Maybe they can't afford where they were living now anymore, so they have to move to another section, another side of town. They have to go to another school. And these children are upset because now they're losing that support system, those friends that they were going to school with. Now that's being ripped away from them. So again, it's different situations that can come up that'll cause conflict in a child's life. But at the same time, we don't want to remove these children from a lot of these conflict situations if it can be helped, if it can be used as a learning opportunity. Because I mean, if you see children at a playground where they're arguing over a small little toy, you don't want to go in there and take them out of that scenario, because you've taken away an opportunity for them to learn how to resolve that issue, right? But if they're clearly in harm's way where they might get hurt, yes, I absolutely take them out of that situation. But if you can use it as that learning opportunity, by all means, please feel free to let them learn from those experiences. But one of these fake Buddha quotes that I really love is, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. And this comes down to essentially holding on to those emotions, that anger you have because someone did you wrong or someone just upset you, and you hold on to that anger, and it's like a pot of boiling water. It's like, and the moment we put a lid on it, did we solve the issue? Did we deal with what we had to do? No. So that's usually what happens when kids just keep everything bottled inside. Eventually, that pot, if we leave it in that heat, it's just going to erupt. It's going to burst, and that boiling water is going to fly everywhere, causing harm, potential harm to someone, right? That's what we're trying to avoid in situations like that. And again, that movie Frozen does a real great job when it comes to this, when it comes to that conflict resolution and talking about your emotions. And one of the best things that we can do for children that are going through some sort of conflict is give them a vocabulary for their emotions. Because a lot of the times we just think, when we ask kids how are they feeling, happy, angry, or sad. It's usually those three, but we know those aren't the only three emotions. I might be upset at something because I dropped my candy bar, I dropped my snack. That doesn't mean I'm angry. Doesn't mean I'm sad. It might just mean I'm upset. But if we don't give them the opportunity to learn that there's different vocabulary out there, it's just going to dwindle it down to those happy, angry, and sad. And we really can't help them much in that situation. So being able to help them learn other vocabulary when it comes to that emotion, the different emotions, is very beneficial. So we know how we can help them deal with what they might be going through. But here we have a list of different things, different ways we can resolve conflicts, or children can resolve conflict. One of the things that usually I do a lot is I walk away for a second. I step away, walk away, let myself get calmed down a little bit, because at the moment, if I'm angry, if I'm upset, I'm not thinking about anything else but winning this argument with this individual that I'm having. So if I step away, and if a child steps away as well, it gives them time to relax, take a breathe. It's like, okay, maybe this issue isn't as big as we thought it was. So it just helps us be clear minded. It helps us a little bit more when it comes to resolving that conflict. It's like, where, okay, well, maybe if I let you try this toy for the first 5 minutes, and then we can take turns, and then I take the next 5 minutes, and we go that route. Maybe it's just a simple ignore it because the issue wasn't as big as I thought it was. So I'm just going to ignore it. If it was if it was me who made the mistake, I'm apologize for it, especially when I'm more level-headed because I stepped away and took a second to myself. I'll apologize. I'll be the bigger person in that situation. Talk about it again. Talking, making that connection with someone else, letting them know why they hurt you, or why this upset you. That all comes in a way. It comes out as a healthy form of communication. That's what we want when it comes to the situation, because we don't want them. We don't want these children to bottle up these emotions, because it is going to cause more harm in the end. So we want to be able to make sure that they feel comfortable. And again, it's another one of those reasons why those interpersonal skills are very important for children, because it helps them de-escalate situations before they escalate into something where they shouldn't be in that situation. But again, I have various different ways here that we can go about that. But when it comes to teaching that conflict resolution, again, just like teaching interpersonal skills, it's stressful for you and the child. It's not going to happen overnight. It might make you feel uncomfortable at times when you're letting them stay in that situation, because they can learn something from it. It's going to be time consuming, but the best thing we can do is just be patient when it comes to helping children in that situation. But I have a few resources up here that we touched briefly on some technology, some barriers for cell phones. So I also have a tech safety app on there. But the first one's the Family Dinner Project. Has much more information when it comes to how we can start conversations with children. It has it labeled into different age groups. If it's teenagers, if it's elementary school kids, it breaks it down to the age groups, so it can help in that situation if you have different age group children that you want to work with. We have anxioustoddlers.com, and this has I really like this website, because they also do have this YouTube series where it helps adults, the parents themselves. It has videos directed for them, but then it also has videos directed for the children themselves, where they can practice activities when it comes to maybe a conversation itself. If that's what those are some of the resources you're trying to find, they have a great selection of videos and just written guides in there where you can search through their catalogs. TechSafety.org. This helps with technology, especially with middle school students, high school students. You see a lot of digital abuse. It can help in that form as well. So if maybe someone maybe one of the children is being abused through social media, it helps you find proper channels, what you can do, what you shouldn't do, and how to best handle that situation as well. So it's resources for that. And last but not least, we have HTNBC, which is our organization, and it has a list of all of our resources there as well, what we have for what we provide for our clients and everything. Now, we have another webinar on Tuesday. And it's more of a resource collection of our organization, what we offer. So if anyone's interested on that, our program manager is actually the one that's going to be in charge of that one this following Tuesday. And it's going to be at 12, and it'll cover a lot more of what Hope Store New Beginning Center does. But aside from that, that is it for today. And again, I'm going to give out that quick reminder. Anyone else who needed CEUs, the moment we close out this webinar, that survey will pop up. Feel free to if there's something, just be honest with that. If there's something that you think could be cut, or if there's something that could be explained more, please feel free to give us your input on that. It helps improve these webinars. Thank you everyone so much for joining me today. I hope you were able to take something from today's webinar.
Thank you for supporting survivors of abuse in our community. Education is the key to prevention. If you found this webinar valuable, please share it with your social and business networks. For information on upcoming webinars, please visit hdnbc.org/webinars, or from our homepage, click Webinars under the Get Educated tab. And check out the HDNBC Community Education page at hdnbc.org/get-educated for more information on school presentations, live trainings, Zoom webinars, and our other educational programs for community organizations, businesses, first responders, youth groups, and more. There you can submit a request for one of our educators to speak to your group. As a trauma-informed agency, we are accepting and affirming of all members of our community. We serve women, men, non-binary individuals, adolescents, teens, and all members of the LGBTQ+ community. If a survivor reaches out to you, try to remain supportive and non-judgmental. Let them know you believe them and want to hear their story. Let them know you care about them and are concerned for their safety. Maintain contact with them. Emphasize that abuse is never okay, they are not alone, and it is not their fault. Tell them to call 911 if they are in physical danger. Tell them that free help is available. Hope Store New Beginning Center's 24-hour hotline at 972-276-0057. Our trauma-informed services are for anyone who has been affected by domestic abuse, including our 24-hour hotline, 972-276-0057, 24-hour emergency shelters, individual and group counseling for adults and children, legal support, case management, transitional housing, community education, and our battering intervention and prevention program. We also have volunteer opportunities available. And don't forget about Hope Store Resale Store in Plano. All proceeds from the resale store help to fund our free services. For more information or to ask a question, please call our main office line at 972-422-2911. Check out our website at hdnbc.org or send an email to info@hdnbc.org. Hope Store New Beginning Center, building lives without violence.